Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 60 of our podcast. My name is Dr. David C. Noe, and I'm here in the vomitorium with Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing great today. How you feeling, Dave?
Pretty well, thanks.
Pretty well?
Yep.
This drizzly weather hasn't you feel some kind of cold coming on or anything
No,
like that?
no. I was down a little bit with something, but I think I've cleared it out. How about you?
So you're in a good mood tonight?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay, all right. Okay. Just wanted to know.
Remember, I put the I in irascible.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But you came in with a smile on your face, and so I was hopeful.
Yeah, as we approached the doors of the vomitorium, there was a little bit of pantomime going on between us.
There was.
Remember that?
I did.
I was thinking maybe we should just do the whole podcast that way.
In pantomime?
Yes.
Oh man, that would be radical.
It would be some of the best material the audience has ever heard.
That's right. Excellent. So, Dave, you got our shout out today.
I do,
yes.
and we're going international.
All right.
Both this week and next.
Oh, it's very exciting.
Yeah, so this goes to Jaap Jacobs, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, J-A-A-P, Jaap. And he says, I took an extra long walk yesterday to listen to the hilarious Mottos Galore episode. Now, Jaap capitalized Mottos Galore.
Yes.
Which it seems to me he's trying to suggest a title for the episode.
Oh.
And I was about to write back an angry letter saying, it's not mottos galore, it's what's a motto with you.
Right. So you think he was trying to...
I do.
Okay.
He's
all
trying to, take over some of the territory. But then I thought, he's the audience, right? The audience is always right. So I should just let
Let's
it
give
go.
him the benefit of the doubt. Yep.
He says, I am a historian of early American history and early modern Dutch colonial expansion. That's pretty specific.
Wow.
With a research focus on 17th century New Netherlands, i.e. New York, when it was Dutch. Even old New York was once New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Right?
Why they changed it, I can't say.
I think people just like it better that way.
That's right.
He says, I am now affiliated with the University of St. Andrews, recently crowned the premier UK university by a UK national newspaper now.
It's number one?
Yeah, but it was crowned that by a UK national newspaper. Could it be a little bit of inside cricket, maybe?
It sounds like it.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right.
After his PhD at Leiden, I have taught at several universities in the Netherlands, United States, and the UK, and he enjoys listening to the podcast.
Well, that's the most important thing.
Wow, we're just so grateful. He's out there in Scotland, right?
Yeah. Are you gonna drop a Scottish accent on us?
I'm not gonna try. No, but I know he takes long walks around firths.
On Firths?
Yes.
Right?
You know, they got firths out there in Scotland.
The Firths of Forth.
There's the Firth of Forth,
Yeah.
which in Latin, let me tell you, is Bodotria.
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 That's the name for the Firth of
That's
Forth?
the Latin name for the Firth of Forth.
Okay.
Now, don't you want to know how I know that?
How do you know that?
Because when I was teaching Latin in graduate school, we taught from a book called Latin for Schools, I think, by L.A. Wilding. Mm-hmm. It's a nice blue-covered series published by Duckworth, and it has all of the place names for Roman Britain.
Oh, that's great.
Including Bodotria.
Bodotria, the Firth of Forth.
That's right.
I spent some time in Edinburgh.
And?
It was
that
great.
your accent?
Yeah, that's all you're going to get. It was great. I loved it.
Was it the haggis or the rain that appealed?
It was, when I was there, it was kind of dark and stormy. But
That's because it's Scotland.
I stood on top of
Scotland.
This mountain, or this little hill called Arthur's Seat, and looked over the Firth of Forth. It was very romantic.
Right next to Arthur's footstool.
That's right, exactly right. So I put my feet up and...
Romantic?
Yeah.
Were you there with Mrs. Winkle?
No, I mean romantic in a broader sense.
In a platonic sense.
In an epic sense.
Okay.
Yes, it was great.
So last time I was in Edinburgh, thanks for asking, was January of 2018.
Oh.
Touring with my son. We saw all the sights. It's a lovely place.
Did you go up to the castle?
I don't remember.
Oh.
We did go to the Harry Potter Emporium.
Oh, is that there?
It's taken over most of Edinburgh now.
Isn't that where J.K. Rowling did her thing,
yes,
right?
she did. Yep.
Wow. Excellent.
Have we gotten off track here?
Yeah, we have gotten off track in Scotland.
All right. So what is this? Well, we should say thank you, Jaap.
Yes.
For listening loyally. Thanks for promoting. He's doing some promotion of the podcast on social media, I've noticed. Which,
Fantastic.
is wonderful. Thanks for keeping the flame alive out there of liberal arts studies, things that are historically and literarily important.
Excellent. Thanks, Jaap. So today, Dave, we got it's kind of around Halloween time, and so we're getting thematic, we're getting seasonal.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about kind of ancient ghosts and ancient ghost stories, monsters. Yes.
Yeah.
exactly.
So this is going to drop on October 26th. I'm pretty sure.
In anticipation of Halloween.
And you have our opening quote. Now, the hardest part of this episode is going to be to decide where to place the spooky ghost noises.
We can leave that to our intrepid engineer.
Could we have Mishka do that?
Yes. Yeah, she knows what she's doing.
Okay.
All right.
You're going to give us the opening quote?
Yes, this comes from what I consider to be kind of the book on this kind of stuff.
All right.
It's a book called Restless Dead.
Restless Dead.
Yes, by Sarah Eels Johnston, who was, I believe, still is at Ohio State University.
Okay, the Ohio State
Yes,
University.
exactly. So, big fan of her scholarship. Used it a lot in my own dissertation, and she's a wonderful, personable person in person too.
That's incredible. That's a lot of persons there.
It is. So she writes in the prologue to this book, the dead are very much like us, driven by the same desires, fears, and angers, seeking the same sorts of rewards and requiring the same sort of care that we do. For this reason, the world of the dead is not only a source of both possible danger and possible help, but a mirror that reflects our own. The reflection is frequently a distorted one, to be sure. The dead are often credited with remarkable powers and thus manifest their desires, fears, and angers in ways that go beyond any available to us. But the distortion is not random. Through their excesses, the dead reveal, like fingerprint powder shaken over a table, where desires, fears, and angers are most acute among the living.
That's a really nice quote.
Isn't that nice? It's nice prose.
It's excellent prose. It is punchy. It's descriptive. It's colorful. I think it really is very nicely put together.
We were just talking before we went on air about...
You and I?
Yes.
Okay.
About how academic writing sometimes is, or can very often be, dense and turgid and not very fun.
Snoozy.
Professor Johnston is one of these that can do it both.
She knows how to turn a phrase.
Yep.
So, what do you make of the quote, though? I'm not sure I understand precisely what she's saying. Is she saying that this is how the classical world saw the dead, or this is how she sees the dead?
I think this is a part of a larger passage where she's talking about kind of the classical world's view of the dead.
Okay.
And this idea, I think she's expressing this idea that the dead in the ancient imagination or superstition were never far from the living realm. They're just there behind a very thin veil. So the kind of the separation between the land of the living, land of the dead was a very thin one.
A fine, like a shower curtain, really.
Yes, exactly.
Not
right.
one of those heavy ones with loops on the top, but one of those kind that you'd get at the dollar store and throw away after a few months.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
Or the one you would see in like Hitchcock's Psycho.
Never seen it.
You've never seen Psycho.
Once again, Winkle,
my
this
gosh.
podcast is not about my ignorance of pop culture. That is not the theme.
All right, okay, let's move on.
But I want to know here,
Yeah.
the dead are very much like us, driven by the same desires, fears, and angers.
Yes.
So one of my desires is typically for good food. Mm-hmm. The dead are driven by that?
Well, I think if I can add something to what
Okay.
she's saying is I think the dead are conceived of often in the way that the gods are conceived of, that they're very much like humans, but their passions are kind of amplified versions of passions of regular people.
So if I want the 8-piece bucket from KFC, the dead want the 12?
They want the 12. They want the whole family pack.
That's how it goes.
For themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think that's what she's saying. So the dead are very close to us, and part of the danger is that they're excessive in the things that they do and that they want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got to look out for them.
Yes, we do.
So what are we going to give the listener today, Dr. Winkle?
We're going to start out talking about kind of specific monsters that pop up in what we might call more kind of ancient Greek and Roman folktale,
Okay.
rather than kind of proper mythology.
Okay.
And then on
So the proper mythology, if I may, deals with things like the Olympians and their relationships.
yes, right. And I mean, and there are monstrous beings in mythology, but we're going
Yes.
to talk about kind of monsters and ghosts of a different quality.
Okay.
Right. And on the other side of that, we're going to talk about a couple of honest to goodness ancient ghost stories.
Ooh.
Yes. We'll have some story time.
All right.
Yeah. We'll read aloud around the campfire, gather
Hold the
around.
flashlight underneath our chins.
Exactly right.
Do kids do that these days?
They should if they don't. There's
Probably
they
an
hold their
app for
phone.
that.
They hold their phones
Yeah.
under their chin.
Shine it up onto their face.
Right.
And then Instagram it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
Are we sounding like a couple of old cruddy daddies?
I'm feeling a little crotchety, to tell you the truth.
Irascibility is my bit.
That's right. It's wearing off though.
Okay. So who's first up today?
Well, we're going to talk about the monster kind of proto-vampire Mormo.
Mormo.
Right. So now there's not a lot of stories that survive about Mormo. She shows up in kind of a fragment here and a fragment there.
It's a female?
It's a female kind of vampirus, succubus, something like that, who is, as best as we can tell, was a kind of a monster that parents told stories about to their children, or the nursemaid told to the children to try to scare them into staying in their beds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you don't want kids getting out and running around and acting like children and having fun and playing games and staying up late.
Right.
So you would tell them Mormo's going to get you.
Mormo's going to get you. In fact, one of the fragments that survives is that parents would say to their children before they shut the door, would they say, "Watch out, Mormo bites."
Oh, that's terrible.
Isn't that horrifying?
That's really awful.
Right. All right. If I did that to my youngest child, there's no way he's sleeping.
No
way.
Spread thumbtacks or something all over the floor.
Right.
Peanut butter to make sure Mormo doesn't get in.
Exactly right.
Crazy. So this is not your marquee monster like Medusa, the Minotaur, some other chimera.
No, I mean those aren't monsters that are going to scare kids. Like the Minotaur, there's one of them. Theseus took care of it.
Right.
They're not worried about the Minotaur hanging out in the closet. Right. So they belong to a different category. But these are kind of more folktale-ish ghost monsters, which there could be many of them, and they can be in many places at once. And they can show up at any time.
That's awful.
That's terrifying.
Okay.
Right.
So what's the etymology of Mormo?
So the root Mormo seems to mean something like the fearful ones, the frightening ones. We don't really know where this comes from, just because there's not a lot of text that survives around it. Sometimes it's combined with kind of the root, the Greek word for wolf, mormoluke. So the fearful, terrible wolves creatures.
Yes, kind of like a werewolf.
Some kind of lycanthrope.
Yes.
Something like that. But we don't know. Scholars think that the original Mormo was a woman of Corinth who
figures.
Well, isn't that fitting though?
Yeah, everything bad happens in Corinth.
Right. There was even that the Greek verb developed korinthazomai, right, to act like a Corinthian.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so that's very fitting. So in the stories differ. So in some versions she eats her children, and then she flies. She kind of reveals herself to be some kind of winged monster. And in others, she's a mother that loses her children, and in her grief and in her rage, she kind of she takes out her vengeance on
other people's children,
other parents that still have their children.
I see.
So there's not a consistent legend about her.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's sometimes associated with Hecate, who has strong associations with the underworld and notions of death in the underworld. But she's hard to pin down. But I think this is in many ways a familiar kind of legend. So, Dave, you know that I'm very interested in things like urban legends.
I know that you are.
Yes.
You like bridginess,
yes.
gefudus moss, bridginess, liminality.
Yes, I did. And a lot
giant rabbits, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of that comes into play into these same. And so you start to see when you read modern urban legends, you start to see how kind of everything old is new again. Mm-hmm. So there's a famous Mexican legend of La Llorona, the weeping woman.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
Nope.
No. So this is
was that a Hitchcock movie with a shower curtain?
No, there was a really bad horror movie that came out called La Llorona a couple of years ago on Netflix. So I don't recommend it. But
right.
But it's the weeping woman, and the idea is that this is a woman who has lost her children, and she's now a liminal being. She's kind of stuck between this world and the next. In some version of the story, she kills herself, but she's unable to cross over, and she becomes this terrifying, rage-filled, vengeance-filled being who can show up at any moment. And so, I think the Mormo legend clearly has overlaps with that same kind of idea.
Is there going to be any candy corn in this episode?
Very little.
There's not going to be any bubble gum or those little heart mints that you put in your pumpkin-shaped candy bag?
Those little antacids?
Yeah. Is that what they are?
I'm stealing somebody else's joke there.
Okay.
Candy corn.
Is it all going to be real heavy and grim and eating children and blood and that kind of stuff?
It's not going to get happy. There's not a lot of happy endings here. But an aside, candy corn, #1 worst candy of all time.
So there's no caramel apples or any other kind of holiday treats in this episode?
No hay rides.
Okay.
No bobbing for.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay, sorry.
Let's keep going.
All right. So, there's not a whole lot else to say about Mormo because there's the stories don't survive. Aristophanes refers to her a couple of times in his plays, and he seems to kind of use it as she represents a kind of an apotropaic image, kind of a Medusa head that you don't look at. And so in his play Acarnians, his character Dicaiopoulos, the lead character, responding to somebody else who's kind of dressed up in some kind of ridiculous outfit.
Okay.
He says something, "Your terrifying armor makes me dizzy. I beg you, take away that Mormo." I can't even. It's so horrible. I can't even look at it.
Yeah, it's like a boogie monster. Can I read some of the Greek there?
Oh, please do. Yes,
because that's better than candy corn anyway.
Right.
Now I'm not reading this in the trochaic tetrameter or the iambic tetrameter, which is what I think it probably is. But we'll give it a go. Dikaiopala sukoi depo hupa tu deus garton haplon elingio. Alanti below sapeneng camu ten mormona.
There's the word mormona.
Yeah, that's our mormona.
Right. So you can see that the translation there is pretty loose from what you read there. But you can't deal with your armor. So
yes.
Take it away. Take away that mormo.
That mormo.
Right.
So you think this word could be used in modern day parlance?
How would you use it? I mean,
how was your day? It was such a mormo.
Such a mormo.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
That traffic out there this week is just mormo.
It's like something you can't. I just can't.
Yes.
I can't deal with it.
I just can't.
Yeah. I like it. Let's try to bring it back.
Well, I've done this with a lot of different words, and I've had no success.
Really? What other words have you tried to kind of bring back? Into
not bring back, but introduce into the lexicon. Transliminate.
Transliminate. Yes.
He transliminated the building.
Yeah.
It's just a fancy way of saying he came in.
I like it. But that hasn't gotten any traction.
Nobody's been using it.
Right. I'm gonna reference another movie that I'm pretty sure you haven't seen. Have you seen the movie Mean Girls?
No.
Okay. Well, there's a character in there who tries to get the term fetch happening like that, like instead of cool, like, oh, that is so fetch.
That is so fetch.
And one of her friends tells her at some point in the movie, says, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Right?
I kind of like that word.
I do. I thought it was, yeah, exactly. Right. Anyway.
Who's next up here?
Well,
if we're going to move on from Mormo, or we got more Mormo?
Well, I mean, there's another Aristophanes quote there where he uses it, I think, slightly different. He's in his play Peace, the character Trugeos responds to another character. This is terrible. You're in the way sitting there. We have no use for your Mormo's head, friend.
So it's this big, misshapen kind of head.
Right. So he seems to use it. On the one hand, it's like, I can't even look at it. And in this one, it's like, oh, it's so ugly.
It's a monstrosity.
It's a monstrosity. Right.
I get that sometimes at movie theaters and, places like that.
What, like move your big head?
Yeah, hey, Mormo. Do we have time for a story?
Please.
Okay.
I'm always up for a story.
All right. So I have a friend who lives out in Iowa, and this person is a great aficionado of hockey games. The person knows who he is. And he goes to this hockey game, and he's stand up, and he's shouting, and the crowd around him starts shouting, "Hey, cheese butt, sit down. Hey, cheese butt." So he starts shouting it too. "Hey, cheese butt, sit down." And then someone taps him on the shoulders. They're yelling at you. He had sat in a platter of nachos.
But he got so caught up.
He got so caught up in it, he didn't know he was the one. Exactly.
Oh, man.
Now, that's frightening. There's your Halloween story.
Oh, man. To realize that you are a cheese butt. Oh, that is. Oh, man. That's a nightmare.
All right. Lamia.
All right. Moving along. So Lamia shows up more in kind of Roman era legends. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be too much a difference between Mormo and Lamia. Are they two names for the same kind of thing? But Lamia is more of a Roman monster, and again, a female vampire. But here there's often legends attached to it that she lures young men in with her charms, and then once they're all sucked in, then she sucks the blood.
Ooh,
yes, right. So shows up in a handful of works. Apuleius, my favorite, mentions her.
Philostratus.
Where a lot of this kind of stuff comes from. And I'd like to read a passage from Philostratus. Is his life of Apollonius of Tyana, who is kind of this wandering mystic prophet. And wherever
Apollonius of Tyana
yes,
is the mystic prophet.
Right.
Okay.
And everywhere he goes, he encounters strange beings and peoples, and he performs miracles, and just wherever he shows up, odd things happen. So he's kind of a hook that Philostratus uses to kind of tell a number of kind of interesting vignettes, if I may. So this is from Book 4, Chapter 25 of his Life of Apollonius. I'm going to drop us right into the middle of the story.
Okay.
And so as he's kind of our main character, the he in this vignette. As he was walking all alone the road towards Kenkriai, so southern Greece.
Yes.
He met with an apparition, and it was a woman who clasped his hand and declared that she had been long in love with him, and that she was a Phoenician woman and lived in a suburb of Corinth, of course. Mm-hmm. And she mentioned the name of the particular suburb and said, "When you reach the place this evening, you will hear my voice as I sing to you, and you shall have wine such as you never before drank, and there will be no rival to disturb you, and we two beautiful things will live together." The youth consented to this, for although he was in general a strenuous philosopher, he was
That's comedy.
he was nevertheless susceptible to the tender passion, and he visited her in the evening, and for the future constantly sought her company as his darling, for he did not yet realize that she was a mere apparition. And this is where the wise man comes in.
Okay.
Then Apollonius looked over Menippus as a sculptor might do, and he sketched an outline of the youth and examined him, and having observed his foibles, he said, "You are a fine youth, and are hunted by fine women, but in this case you are cherishing a serpent, and a serpent cherishes you." And when Menippus expressed his surprise, he added, "For this lady is of a kind you cannot marry. Why should you? Do you think that she loves you?" "Indeed I do," said the youth, "since she behaves to me as if she loves me." "And would you then marry her?" said Apollonius.
So, if I may,
Yeah.
this is like a platonic dialogue now.
That's right.
Apollonius is going to get to the bottom of this as kind of a love counselor.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right.
Right. See, this guy can do it all.
Okay.
All right. He says, "Would you marry her?" "Why, yes, for it would be delightful to marry a woman who loves you." Thereupon Apollonius asked when the wedding was to be. "Perhaps tomorrow," said the other, "for it brooks no delays." He's rushing into things. Apollonius therefore waited for the occasion of the wedding breakfast, and then, presenting himself before the guests who had just arrived, he said, "Where is the dainty lady at whose instance you have come?" "Here she is," replied Menippus. And at the same moment he rose slightly from his seat, blushing. "And to which of you belong the silver and gold and all the rest of the decorations of the banqueting hall?" "To the lady," replied the youth, "for this is all I have of my own," pointing to the philosopher's cloak which he wore. And Apollonius said, "Have you heard of the gardens of Tantalus, how they exist and yet do not exist?" This is like the worst best man speech at a wedding of all time.
This is the toast.
This is the toast, right. "Yes," they answered, "in the poems of Homer, or we certainly never went down to Hades." "As such," replied Apollonius, "you must regard this adornment, for it is not reality, but the semblance of reality. And that you may realize the truth of what I say, this fine bride is one of the vampires. That is to say, one of those beings whom the many regard as Lamias and hobgoblins. These beings fall in love, and they are devoted to the delights of Aphrodite, but especially to the flesh of human beings. And they decoy with such delights those whom they mean to devour in their feasts."
Oh, it's terrible.
So he can see through the facade.
Because he's a philosopher, Apollonius.
Yes.
So whatever happened to this poor fellow, Menippus?
I believe he...
Did he get eaten?
I don't think he gets eaten. Apollonius saves
him.
Saves the day, right.
A little philosophy
Yeah, exactly.
is all you need to take care of things.
This is what Apollonius does. He goes from town to town, saving the day and telling people, setting them on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, look out, because this beautiful woman with whom you've been sharing this dalliance actually wants to eat you.
He wants to eat you, right. So I take this to be a kind of a fairly typical version of the Lamia story, right? So geared more towards...
Wasn't there a song, pop song? She's a man-eater? Who is that?
The Hall & Oates.
Is that's Hall & Oates?
Yes, exactly. She, with the sax line, right there. Yeah, she's a man-eater.
Yeah, is that how it goes?
So something like that.
It's a little pitchy. But
Sorry about that. Yeah.
what was
Haven't warmed
that?
up.
Circa 1983, something like that.
Man-eater has got to be, I'd say 84, 85.
Okay, so
Yep.
this is Lamia. This is what a Lamia is,
Right, exactly.
She's a man-eater.
Except a literal, I think Hall & Oates were using a metaphor.
Oh, okay.
Although they do refer to it as a jaguar in that song.
I was too young, really, to distinguish between metaphor and reality. So.
How young were you in 1985?
A couple years younger than you were in
All right, so-
1985.
Okay. Yeah, too young to appreciate the nuance of Hall & Oates?
Definitely.
Okay, all right.
So we've covered Mormo, we've covered Lamia. Who's
Yes,
next?
the dreaded Empousa.
The Empousa.
Yes. So the Empousa, described as a monstrous specter, which was believed to devour human beings. It could take on different forms. Also, like Mormo, associated with Hecate.
So Hecate is the triple witch goddess, right?
Right. Associated with the underworld.
Okay.
And dark magic. And so she would release the Empousa to frighten travelers. And I think it goes along with this idea that once you leave the confines of a city and you're out on the highways and the byways, the crossroads, things get dangerous, things get slippery, things get liminal. And so that's where you're going to encounter these in-between beings, these monsters. They tend to be more creatures of nature.
Did you ever have to go take the garbage out at night?
Oh yeah.
It was frightening,
It was
right?
terrifying, right? Or like if you're like at summer camp, going down to the bathhouse in the middle of the night, you're not coming back. No.
It's a week of no hygiene, let's face it.
Exactly right.
If you got to go down there to get clean, it's just not worth it.
It's not worth it. So, no, exactly. Or no, I'm just going to hold it.
Right.
Yes. Right. So
Well, as a rural dweller, a kind of a rusticus,
yes.
when I took the trash out, there was no artificial light. It was all, I wasn't a city boy like you.
Right.
It was just the light of the stars, and I would carry the trash out to its final resting place and then turn around and race back
Right.
as fast as I could.
Exactly.
And I didn't even know about Empousa, but I was sure something was
out there.
nipping at my boots.
That's right. There's something about the dark and the silence that you can convince yourself of.
But you like that stuff.
I do.
You like to be scared.
I'm drawn to that kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't fully understand it myself.
You mean why you're drawn to it?
Why to it? Right.
I know why I'm repelled by it.
Why?
Because it's scary.
Oh, that's why. That's right. So you dreaded that chore?
Oh, yes. I never ran so fast.
So your dad said, "Hey, Dave, take the garbage out." Oh no.
Exactly.
This could
Broken eggshells and coffee grounds.
This could be it.
This could be it.
Right. So Hecate would send this creature out to frighten travel. I guess just for some wicked fun. I don't really understand it. And it was the thing that marks the Empousa was it was kind of a composite beast that would constantly change shape.
So kind of like a chimera, which is composite.
Yes.
But a little bit like Proteus.
Right.
In the Odyssey.
Right. The
shapeshifter.
The old man of the sea. Right. And who's constantly changing his shape to escape from your clutches.
Right.
Right. But I think with the Empousa, part of what makes her terrifying is that you can't pin her down. And you never know what she's going to be. Right. So when it appears, there's a way to deal with the Empousa. All you've got to do is you've got to convincingly insult it, and it will make a horrible screeching, shrill noise and run away from you.
It's kind of how you might deal with undergrads.
Yes, exactly right. Right, yeah, just scream insults at them, and yeah, they'll run for it.
That was gratuitous.
All right, so Philostratus, who we just read the bit about the Lamia, he mentions the Empousa, and so we got another passage to look at here. Dave, you want to read that?
Yeah, let me do that. So I don't know whose translation this is. It's a public domain translation, I assume?
I think it's the Loeb translation, but I'm forgetting the name. Yeah.
Yes. Having passed the Caucasus, our travelers say they saw men 4 cubits high, and they were already black, and that when they passed over the river Indus, they saw others 5 cubits high. But on their way to this river, our wayfarers found the following incidents worthy of notice. For they were traveling by bright moonlight when the figure of an Empousa, or hobgoblin, appeared to them, that changed from one form into another and sometimes vanished into nothing. And Apollonius realized what it was, and himself heaped abuse on the hobgoblin, and instructed his party to do the same, saying that this was the right remedy for such a visitation. And the phantasm fled away, shrieking, even as ghosts do.
So again, Apollonius, he knows exactly what to do in the situation.
Yeah,
right?
these ghosts are very thin-skinned, aren't they?
Especially this one, right? All you got to do is just kind of
say a few unkind words
and they can't handle it.
That's crazy.
It's not very scary.
No, it isn't.
No. So I wish we had the Greek in front of us. I really want to know what is translated here as hobgoblin.
Yes.
Yeah. But when I think of a hobgoblin, I think of kind of a greenish, impish thing with long, big ears and kind of Cro-Magnon arms.
Right.
But I don't know what's kind of implied here.
Once again, the undergraduate.
Yeah. You're not going to stop, are you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, but it kind of reminds me of that, kind of that mock the devil and he will flee from you kind of concept. There's a whole kind of body of apotropaic magic, and one of the ways that
you better define the term apotropaic
to ward off, to turn away.
Yes.
Right. And so the Greeks and the Romans were very superstitious peoples. Probably the Romans even more so than the Greeks. And so in that superstitious imagination, every time you crossed one of these liminal places, like a threshold or a gate or a crossroads, you were in danger of encountering one of these restless dead that's liminal itself, trapped between worlds. And one of the ways you could protect yourself was by laughing. And so we don't know exactly how this worked, but someone posited that you'd walk into a friend's house, you might utter a little fake laugh, as almost like a little magic charm. It's like how do you deal with that scary creature? You mock it. You laugh at it, and then you're cleared to enter the house.
So the fake laugh, huh?
Something like that, maybe.
Interesting.
Right.
Wasn't that how our friendship began?
Lots of fake laughter.
You said something you thought was funny, and I
you went
gave you kind of a fake laugh, and we were off to the races.
Exactly. I was certainly apotropaic in that moment. It was a big turnoff. But the Empousa. is one of these characters that you can get rid of by mocking at. Now, there's a great scene
Okay.
in Aristophanes' Frogs, which we did an episode on.
Yes, Brekkekekex
Quacks, yes. And in that play, go back and listen to the episode to get the full story.
You telling me?
I'm telling the audience here.
okay.
Right. You too.
I can't listen to that again.
No. So Xanthias, the clever slave,
Yes.
and the god Dionysus, they're on their way down into the underworld to bring Euripides back from the dead.
Right.
And all kinds of hijinks and tomfoolery happens. And in one of these scenes, Xanthias claims to see the Empousa approaching in the underworld.
So shall I be Xanthias here?
You want to be Xanthias?
I think that would be better.
Okay.
Or do you want to be Dionysus?
Take Xanthias.
Dionysus is the divine guy, right?
Right, exactly. But he's also the buffoon. In this.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, exactly. I'll take the buffoon role.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a little bit of typecasting. Of course, Master. Wait, what was that?
What? What is it?
It's behind us.
Well, then get behind me.
No, wait, it's up ahead.
Then get in front of me.
Holy Hestia, I see it now. Now that's what I call a monstrous beast.
What is it? What does it look like?
Hard to say. It's really weird. It keeps changing shape. It's an ox. No, now it's an ass. Wait, now it's a woman. And what a woman. Yowza.
A woman, you say? Where? You know, I should probably say hello.
Hold on. She's not a woman anymore. Now she's a nasty cur.
Oh, no, it's the Empousa.
Crazy. Now her whole face looks like it's on fire.
Does she have a leg made of bronze?
Why, yes, she does. Good call, Master. The other one seems to be made of, cow dung. Now that's odd.
Oh, good gods, where can I escape to?
Where can I escape to?
My dear holy man, save me from sinking. I'll buy you another, whatever you're drinking.
Oh, my dear Heracles, we are toast.
Don't call me that. Never call me that.
Okay, then. Oh, my dear Dionysus.
Oh, that's worse than Heracles.
Hey, Empousa, beat it. Scram.
What's happening? What's going on?
Relax, we're good. Like Hegelakis, we can say, the storm hath passed, and we can now set snail. That is, the Empousa has left the building. Set snail?
It's a
pun?
That's the kind of the punch of that has been lost.
This is your translation, isn't it? I smell Winkle on this.
You do. I'm very proud of this translation.
It's good.
Yeah, thank you.
But what is the pun of the snail? I mean, we can go slowly?
I don't, it's been so long. I don't remember. I was trying, how do you translate a pun from one language into another?
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, right? But I remember the footnote of the edition I was using saying that we don't really know, why this would have been funny to an audience. So I did the best I could.
That's pretty good.
Right. So kind of the idea is that there was no Empousa here. Xanthias is just yanking his master's chain.
Making the whole thing up.
Right. But it's probably the most extended passage in which the Empousa makes an appearance. So, all right. So there we have it. We have our kind of our three.
We got our Mormo.
We got our Mormo. We got our Lamia, and we got our
Empousa.
and the Empousa.
Did you ever consider dressing up like one of these for Halloween?
I don't know how that would go over in the neighborhood.
Really?
I mean, leg of bronze and cow dung. That'd be hard to pull off, though.
One of my children asked me a few weeks ago what I dressed up as for the Halloween season.
Yeah.
And I went as a mime once.
Okay.
Yep. I went as Groucho Marx once.
Oh, that's excellent. You had the big grease paint mustache.
Something like that. I borrowed someone's lab coat and I made a little headband, kind of a when Groucho's dressed up like a doctor.
Yes, of course.
I used an orange juice can for lid for the the reflective thing the doctor puts on his head. And I had a real cigar.
Yeah.
That I got from Mackinac Island.
Did you do kind of that hunched over walk?
I did. Yeah. And this real cigar was, a foot long because it was a comic cigar.
Yeah.
This was back in the day when I actually took this real cigar to public school. And I carried it around and kept it in my mouth all day. So,
really?
Yeah.
And it was not an issue?
It became an issue to my head later in the afternoon. But it wasn't an issue for the authorities because I didn't really know what I was doing and they didn't know what I was doing either.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's great. Now we share an affinity for the Marx Brothers, and so it goes. Your love of them goes back
way back.
Yeah.
And you dressed up as
I was thinking about this in the drive.
Margaret Dumont.
Now, there's a deep reference.
She's in the Marx Brothers.
Exactly right. She was the comic foil.
Yes.
Right. No, I was thinking on the way over, and how disappointing kind of the history of my
Halloween costuming.
They were. I had friends that we'd go out as a group.
Right.
My friends were also clever and
elaborate.
Right. And I'm just like, I'll pick up this plastic Yoda head.
It's never too late, Winkle.
I know. I suppose. Right. My boys are really into it. They're really clever about coming up with their own costumes. And
what's the cleverest costume that one of them has come up with?
My oldest son, a couple of years ago, he turned himself into a cyborg.
Wow.
And he got all of these electronics to kind of put over his face and his eye.
Yeah.
It was great.
Did he ever turn back into a human being? Or?
Eventually he
Okay.
did. He eventually did. But he played that role well.
Believable.
Very believable.
That's great.
Yep. So my children are doing what I was never able to do.
Yeah.
I was too lazy about it.
Yeah. One of my most painful Halloween memories, because this show is not about my ignorance of pop culture.
No.
It's about painful childhood memories.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I dressed up as a robot and went to some childhood party where I was mistaken for different kitchen appliances. So what are you, a dishwasher? No, I'm a robot. Are you an oven? You going to bake me a pizza? No, I'm a robot.
Right.
It was painful.
Constant riffing on that.
Painful.
You know, I've always hated the Halloween party.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's the worst. So you come in, it's like, oh, that's clever, and then,
Right.
now it's kind of this huge, fun thing, and then it's like,
It's a letdown, and you're lampooned the rest of the time.
and now I got to be this for the next 2 hours, right?
Right.
Whereas trick or treating, every door is a new stage.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Always hated the Halloween party. Yeah.
So when we have the ad nauseum Halloween party, we're just going to trick or treat.
Yes, exactly. We're not having some.
It's all candy corn.
all candy corn, circus peanuts.
Right. Those are the worst ones. Well, I think it's about time to pay the bills, isn't it, Jeff?
Yes, it is.
All right, so let's do the ads.
All right. This episode of Ad Nauseam brought to you by Hackett Publishing. For the last 40 plus years, Hackett Publishing, based in Indianapolis and Cambridge, have been bringing to the wider public affordable, attractive, erudite editions, translations of not just classical works, but from works from all corners of the humanities. Dave, you got some favorites, I know.
Yes, I like very much their philosophical offerings. I'm looking at the webpage right now. They have the Plato Reader by CDC Reeve, edited by CDC Reeve. I'm a great fan of Reeve. His edition of the Republic I reviewed once for a publication. And this Plato Reader, 8 Essential Dialogues, edited by Reeve, put together with some translations of Reeve, Grube, Nehamas, and Paul Woodruff. It looks like an excellent volume.
Oh, very, very cool. Yeah, I just rediscovered on my own shelves their wonderful anthology of classical myth. I know we got some mythies out there.
Absolutely.
So if you're interested in kind of a near comprehensive collection of Greek mythology in translations of primary texts, it's the go-to text.
Definitely.
It's affordable. It's attractive. The front of it looks like a red figure vase.
Right.
It's beautiful.
I have some other good things to say about Hackett.
No, please.
So I am very enamored of the Lingua Latina per se illustrata.
Yes.
I think I'm teaching, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5 different classes this semester, all using Lingua Latina. Idiomatic, colorful, good storyline. And they're the publisher, and they support it very, very vigorously.
Excellent. So, listeners, if you want to take advantage of all that Hackett has to offer, go to hackettpublishing.com, HACKETT publishing.com. Find what you want, stick it in the little grocery thing, type in the coupon code box AN2021, and Dave, if they do that, what do they get?
They're going to get 20% off, which, if I'm not mistaken, is 1/5.
1/5.
And free shipping.
Free shipping, both of those.
And they're going to get the satisfaction of knowing that they are doing something about the promotion of the classics.
Indeed.
That is, they are helping support this podcast, which brings you some kind of weekly drivel, about an hour worth of something. And you want to support that? You can get yourself some good texts and help out the cause of the classics.
So check it out.
This episode is also brought to you by Ratio Coffee of Portland, Oregon. Mark Helwig and his crack team have solved all of the problems that you might have previously had about coffee making and ugly appliances.
Oh, I know myself and many friends have had lots of problems
With ugly appliances?
ugly appliances and coffee in general.
Yes.
Right. And you're saying Mark Helwig and his team have solved these things.
They have solved it.
Yeah.
So if you come home after a long day of work, or you wake up in the morning after a long night of sleeping,
Yes.
and you stumble down to the coffee machine, what kind of appliance do you want to greet you?
Well, I want something beautiful. I want something attractive. I want something alluring.
You don't want something that's made out of squirty plastic and
No.
costs $19.99
No,
and
who would want this?
is no better than the packaging it came in.
Right. No, when I was a grad student, maybe that was my only option. But,
Right.
But now the Ratio 6, the machine I have, is the one
Right.
that greets me every morning. I have
Yes.
a stainless steel model. It's a work of art sitting there, and I know when I hit that button, good things are coming.
Yes, you're going to go through the bloom stage.
Yes.
A little bit of really hot water comes down into the cone and lets all of the CO2 gas off.
Yes. Lots of off gassing.
Yes.
Right.
And then you have the brew stage.
The brew stage is second, yes.
Yes, and the hot water sits in the grounds there and drips down through the cone into your carafe. Mm-hmm. And then we have ready.
The ready stage. That's all there is to it.
The magic happens.
Yep. In my machine, it blinks. The lights blink 3 times, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and I've got the ratio 8, which is a little bit larger model, I'd like to say. Mm-hmm. And it's in oyster, a variety of colors with walnut accents. These are hand-assembled. They've got borosilicate hand-blown glass for the carafe. Incredible machines.
Yeah, and so our listeners, you can take advantage of our offer here for both the ratio 6 and the 8.
That's right.
Now. And if you enter the coupon code ANCO.
That's right, which stands for Ad Nauseam Coffee.
When you go to ratiocoffee.com.
That's right.
You type that in and you get, I believe, 15% off.
15% off the 6 or the 8.
Or the 8.
Mark himself, a great devotee of the classics.
Yes.
He definitely committed to sharing the classics and the kind of joy and pleasure that this literature and this history can bring to a broad audience, generously supporting the podcast. And we want to encourage you, listener, to get yourself a good coffee maker and support Ad Nauseam.
Go to ratiocoffee.com today. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by the Moss Method. Dave, tell us a little bit about the Moss Method.
Yes, the Moss Method for Greek is a program that I have developed whereby I can help you go from an absolute beginner, a neophyte, to an erudite individual, a person who knows a lot of Greek. And it's not going to take very long.
How can that be? Of course, it's going to take a long time.
No. It does take time to learn a language. There are no shortcuts.
Right.
People are always asking me, what book do you recommend? How do I learn this? And I say, look, it doesn't really matter what the book is. What matters is your disposition and your commitment. If you want to learn Greek, you want to learn Latin, you can do it. However, it helps a lot if you have a trusted guide, a centaur-like character, that's me, in your life who's going to lead you through the thickets of Greek so you can actually learn the language.
And the Moss Method offers exactly this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So there are 4 modules, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each is 40 lessons. The last one's a little bit longer. And the lessons are based on stories where you read a story and I guide you through the grammar, the syntax, the lexemes, the semantics. It's a full system. But even though I'm testing you on the forms and you're learning terms and all this, it's not tedious. It's not dull.
Would you say it's fun?
It's fun
because
you're reading great stories like the pedant learns about a letter, the fox and the hungry bear, things from Aesop, things from Plato, things from Lucian, and a variety, Herodotus, a variety of authors. So it's very, very engaging.
That sounds great. So how would our listeners take advantage of this?
Well, they need to go to mossmethod.com, mossmethod.com, look through the promotional materials, the free videos, the free instruction. I give away a lot of stuff. Check it out. See if it's for you. It's designed for, say, homeschoolers, middle school, high school kids. I got a number of kids studying it. It's designed for parents who maybe want to teach their children. If you're headed into seminary or grad school, this is going to give you an absolutely solid footing in Greek. You're going to be well prepared.
Sounds great.
mossmethod.com. Check it out. Okay, Jeff, now as we get back into it, we have 2 ancient ghost stories.
Right.
Ooh.
Very, very spooky.
Okay, let's start out with number 1.
Number 1. So we're going to have a little story time here.
All right.
So this first one comes from...
Let me get my s'mores.
You got the s'mores, exactly right. Around the campfire, flashlight under the chin. Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Take my shoes off.
Shoes, really?
Don't you take your shoes off around a campfire?
Kind of to warm your toes?
Your toes, right.
Okay, I usually get my shoes on.
Okay.
Okay. This one comes from Pliny the Younger. Or is it Pliny?
If you ask Dennis Miller...
It's Pliny.
It's Pliny the Younger. I think Dennis Miller is a very funny man.
Yes.
And I like most of his material. But when he wants to, parody the intelligent person, we're not talking about some egghead. He always uses Pliny the Elder. But he mispronounces it. Maybe it's on purpose.
Hey, the very fact that we have there's a mainstream comedian out there
who
referencing
knows?
Pliny the Elder, right? This is
it's worth something.
It's worth something, right? So this is a letter not of Pliny or Pliny the Elder. This is Pliny the Younger, and who left behind a number of these letters, which give a really wonderful window into everyday life from many facets. His one day I would love to do an episode on his letter about the eruption of Vesuvius, because it's this eyewitness account. Right?
Oh, also the exchange between him and Trajan on the persecution of the Christians.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
Fascinating, yes. It fills in lots of gaps in terms of our knowledge of on-the-ground history from that era. So this is a letter that he writes and talks about this apparent haunted house in Athens. You want to go back and forth with this one? Can we go paragraph by paragraph?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And what translation are we using here?
Yeah, so this is the Loeb edition in the public domain from 1914.
Okay.
And I think the translator is William Melmoth.
Melmoth.
Sounds like a bit of a Mormo.
Bit of a Mormo, right?
No, I'm sure Melmoth, may he rest in peace.
I'm sure he was a delightful person.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Aren't most classicists?
Exactly.
And he can turn a phrase, as we're going to hear in just a moment.
Absolutely. So I'll start this off here.
Go for it.
Right. So Pliny writes, "The present recess from business we are now enjoying affords you leisure to give, and me to receive instruction. I am extremely desirous, therefore, to know whether you believe in the existence of ghosts, and that they have a real form, and are a sort of divinities, or only the visionary impressions of a terrified imagination. What particularly inclines me to believe in their existence is a story which I heard of Curtius Rufus. When he was in low circumstances and unknown in the world, he attended the governor of Africa into that province. One evening, as he was walking in the public portico, there appeared to him the figure of a woman, of unusual size and of beauty more than human.
And as he stood there, terrified and astonished, she told him she was the tutelary power that presided over Africa, and was come to inform him of the future events of his life, that he should go back to Rome to enjoy high honors there, and return to that province invested with the proconsular dignity, and there should die. Every circumstance of this prediction actually came to pass. It is said farther that upon his arrival at Carthage, as he was coming out of the ship, the same figure met him upon the shore. It is certain, at least, that being seized with a fit of illness, though there were no symptoms in his case that led those about him to despair, he instantly gave up all hope of recovery, judging apparently of the truth of the future part of the prediction by what had already been fulfilled, and of the approaching misfortune from his former prosperity. Now the following story, which I am going to tell you just as I heard it, is it not more terrible than the former, while quite as wonderful?"
So it's kind of a ghost of Christmas future.
Yes.
Right. That's
like those many terrible memes that get passed around among Latin teachers. Have you seen that? The ghost of future perfect past indicative.
Oh, yes, I have seen those.
It was funny the first time, but come on, people, we've all seen it.
That's right. Let it go. All right, continuing on. So, Pliny. "There was at Athens a large and roomy house, which had a bad name, so that no one could live there. In the dead of night, a noise resembling the clashing of iron was frequently heard, which, if you listened more attentively, sounded like the rattling of chains, distant at first, but approaching nearer by degrees. Immediately afterwards, a spectre appeared in the form of an old man, of extremely emaciated and squalid appearance, with a long beard and disheveled hair, rattling the chains on his feet and hands. The distressed occupants, meanwhile, passed their wakeful nights under the most dreadful terrors imaginable. This, as it broke their rest, ruined their health, and brought on distempers. Their terror grew upon them, and death ensued. Even in the daytime, though the spirit did not appear, yet the impression remained so strong upon their imaginations that it still seemed before their eyes, and kept them in perpetual alarm. Consequently, the house was at length deserted, as being deemed absolutely uninhabitable, so that it was now entirely abandoned to the ghost. However, in hopes that some tenant might be found who was ignorant of this very alarming circumstance, a bill was put up, giving notice that it was either to be let or sold. It happened that Athenodorus the philosopher came to Athens at this time, and reading the bill, inquired the price."
So the house is haunted.
Mm-hmm.
The ghost drives everybody out. Then there's a bill put up giving notice to be let. You can rent the place.
Right.
Maybe like one of the places I lived, between undergrad and getting married and living like a human being. And you could actually purchase it.
Yeah.
So Athenodorus comes,
Yes.
right? And what's going to happen? So, may I?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, take it away.
You're not frightened, are you?
No, I was thinking that this is very much like the setup to the Amityville horror. Familiar with the Amityville horror?
No.
Okay, never mind. Let's just go on.
The extraordinary cheapness raised his suspicion. You can't sneak anything by Athenodorus. Nevertheless, when he heard the whole story, he was so far from being discouraged that he was more strongly inclined to hire it, and in short, actually did so. When it grew towards evening, he ordered a couch to be prepared for him in the front part of the house, and after calling for a light, together with his pencil and tablets, directed all his people to retire. But that his mind might not, for want of employment, be open to the vain terrors of imaginary noises and spirits, he applied himself to writing with the utmost attention. Isn't that exactly what a philosopher would do?
Right. exactly right. I mean, I especially demand that a couch be prepared for him.
Yes,
right.
so I can lie down here and write and not be afraid of the ghosts.
In the wee hours.
The first part of the night passed in entire silence as usual. At length, the clanking of iron and rattling of chains was heard. However, he neither lifted up his eyes nor laid down his pen.
Of course not.
But in order to keep calm and collected, tried to pass the sounds off to himself as something else.
Just the plumbing.
Right. The noise increased and advanced nearer till it seemed at the door and at last in the chamber. He looked up, saw, and recognized the ghost exactly as it had been described to him. It stood before him, beckoning with the finger like a person who calls another.
Athenodorus, in reply, made a sign with his hand that it should wait a little.
He's going to put the ghost off?
Yeah, guys, hold up a second.
Let me get to the end of the sentence.
That's right. I love this guy. And threw his eyes again upon his papers. Wow, this guy's dedicated. The ghost then rattled his chains over the head of the philosopher, who looked up upon this, and seeing it beckoning as before, immediately arose, and, light in hand, followed it. The ghost slowly stalked along, as if encumbered with its chains, and turning into the area of the house, suddenly vanished. Athenodorus, being thus deserted, made a mark with some grass and leaves upon the spot where the spirit had left him. That's kind of odd. Did he just have those on him?
Can I interrupt you for a moment? Yeah. It says turned into the area of the house. The common Latin word for the lawn or the yard is area domus.
Oh, okay.
So I'm guessing Melmoth here kind of left the word untranslated.
So he's in the garden? Maybe?
No, yes, walked out into the front yard of the house. And that's where the leaves and the grass come up. But that's obscured a little bit by what I would say is a slightly clumsy translation here.
He's such a Mormo.
Come on.
All right, so he made a mark with some grass and leaves on the spot where the spirit had left him. The next day, he gave information to the magistrates and advised them to order that spot be dug up.
Oh.
This was accordingly done, and the skeleton of a man in chains was found there. For the body, having lain a considerable time in the ground, was putrefied and moldered away from the fetters. The bones being collected together were publicly buried, and thus after the ghost was appeased by the proper ceremonies, the house was haunted no more. This is every haunted house story you've ever heard.
Right.
It's like Poltergeist, the house is, it was buried on an ancient Indian burial ground, and they're upset about it. So this idea of the guy or the people didn't get proper burial, or you've defiled their burial, that stirs them up and they become the restless dead.
So what does that suggest to you?
Well, I mean, that
it's true?
No, I was going to say that so often these kinds of stories in the Western tradition, the origin of kind of horror is often, it's Mary Shelley, it's Poe, right? It's the Gothic horror of the early 19th century. But here's Pliny, hundreds of years before this, telling those very same kinds of stories. This is I think this is an archetype that you find around the world.
But what explains it?
Like whether it's true or not?
Yes, what explains it?
Where does that archetype come from?
Yes.
I don't know.
What would Campbell say?
What would Campbell say?
The Jung and the Restless.
Campbell would say, we probably relying on Jung, would say that this is a phantasm of our dreams. This is our
but it all happens to be the same.
Well,
the collective subconsciousness.
Kind of, yeah. The story plays out along similar lines. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Epicurus would say, these are the atoms of the individual that are still kind of floating around and
swerving.
Yes, they haven't been completely put to rest. The gossamer atoms.
There you go. Yeah, exactly right. So,
shall I continue
here?
Yeah,
please.
Or are you going to make another point?
No.
Okay,
to carry on.
This story I believe upon the credit of others. What I am going to mention, I give you upon my own. I have a freedman named Marcus, who is by no means illiterate. One night, as he and his younger brother were lying together, he fancied he saw somebody upon his bed, who took out a pair of scissors and cut off the hair from the top part of his own head, and in the morning it appeared his hair was actually cut, and the clippings lay scattered about the floor. A short time after this, an event of a similar nature contributed to give credit to the former story. A young lad of my family was sleeping in his apartment with the rest of his companions, when two persons clad in white came in, as he says, through the windows, cut off his hair as he lay, and then returned the same way they entered. The next morning it was found that this boy had been served just as the other, and there was the hair again spread about the room. This is the ghost barber.
This is the ghost barber.
What's he doing?
I don't know. It's bizarre.
Nothing remarkable indeed followed these events, unless perhaps that I escaped a prosecution, in which, if Domitian, during whose reign this happened, had lived some time longer, I should certainly have been involved. So the way to get out of a tight political lawsuit is ghost barbering.
Ghost barbering. Very strange.
Who would have guessed?
No, not me.
For after the death of that emperor, articles of impeachment against me were found in his scriptura, which had been exhibited by Carus.
Scriptura, like his writing desk?
I think that's what it is.
Something like that, yeah.
Scrinium is the term I'm more familiar with.
Scrinium, yeah.
But it works.
This is kind of Italianate, yeah. As you were reading this, there's, like in Apuleius and Petronius, there are stories about people getting their hair cut and the hair is being used. If you can get a piece of something,
it's a talisman.
It's a talisman, right? If your hair or a fingernail, that if you have a piece of somebody's body,
you can do something with it.
You can do something with it. But here, they're cutting hair and just scattering on the
and
floor.
leaving it.
That's right.
It's a mess.
It's a drive-by barbering. It's very bizarre. All right, we got one last paragraph here. It may therefore be conjectured, since it is customary for persons under any public accusation to let their hair grow, it is. This cutting off of the hair of my servants was a sign I should escape the imminent danger that threatened me. Let me desire you then to give this question your mature consideration. The subject deserves your examination, as, I trust, I am not myself altogether unworthy of participation in the abundance of your superior knowledge.
He's kind of buttering up then, isn't he?
This is kind of boilerplate.
Standard
right?
Pliny.
Right. And though you would, as usual, balance between two opinions, yet I hope you will lean more to one side than the other, lest, whilst I consult you in order to have my doubt settled, you should dismiss me in the same suspense and indecision that occasioned you in the present application. Farewell.
Farewell.
Right.
So Pliny's a believer.
He's a believer, right.
In the ghost. And the ghost barbering, the gods or someone, I don't know, is telling him, you're going to not have this difficult public trial because people tend to grow their hair when they're facing prosecution. And kind of like the Unabomber, right?
Yeah. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's let himself go.
Right.
I think the general idea is that when people are under tremendous stress,
you don't take care of your appearance.
You don't take care of your appearance. Maybe you have good hygiene, but when you're under a lot of stress, you generally aren't concerned about how you appear to others.
So you think that's what's behind the growing out the hair?
Correct.
Because you're under stress. The last thing you want to think about is going to the salon.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you may be, in the dock, right? And about to go into court. You don't have time to trim your nails and do all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So Pliny, maybe the Unabomber is a bad example. I don't know. But in any event...
Yeah.
Pliny believes it.
He believes it, right? I don't think that Sura, who he wrote this letter to, I don't think his response survives. So
no, it's too bad.
Right.
So now we go on to the second ghost story.
Yes.
And this comes from Phlegon of Tralles.
Yes, everyone's favorite.
And who preserved this for us?
Who preserved this for us?
Is it a fragment? I'm not familiar with Phlegon.
Usually dated to the 2nd century.
Okay.
Minor author, yes, a fragmentary.
Okay.
Seems kind of in that the kind of the Lucian mold.
Right.
Right.
And so who's the translator?
This comes from Hansen.
All right.
Who's done lots of, he translated Apuleius and has done lots of Loeb translations.
Excellent.
Yep. So in this story, it centers around a dead girl that comes back to life or appears again and then disappears and comes back and shows up again and again to kind of our main character in the story, which is a guy named Macates. Mm-hmm. And he sees this dead girl appear and runs to her parents and say, listen to who I saw. And then she disappears and he's having a hard time, believing what he's seeing and trying to get to the bottom of this mystery.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll pick up the story kind of halfway through then.
You going to start?
I'll start it out, yeah. Night came on, and now it was the hour when Philinian, that's the name of the dead girl, was accustomed to come to him. The household kept watch, wanting to know of her arrival. She entered at the usual time and sat down on the bed. Macates pretended that nothing was wrong, since he wished to investigate the whole incredible matter to find out if the girl he was consorting with, who took care to come to him at the same hour, was actually dead. As she ate and drank with him, he simply could not believe what the others had told him, and supposed that some grave robbers had dug into the tomb and sold the clothes and gold to her father. But in his wish to learn exactly what was the case, he secretly went to send his slaves to summon her parents Demestratos and Charito.
They came quickly. When they first saw her, they were speechless and panic-stricken by the amazing sight. But after that they cried aloud and embraced their daughter. Then Philinian said to them, Mother and Father, how unfairly you have grudged my being with a guest for 3 days in my father's house, since I have caused no one any pain. For this reason, on account of your meddling, you shall grieve all over again, and I shall return to the place appointed for me, for it was not without divine will that I came here. Immediately upon speaking these words, she was dead, and her body lay stretched visibly on the bed. Her father and mother threw themselves upon her, and there was much confusion and wailing in the house because of the calamity. The misfortune was unbearable, and the sight incredible.
The event was quickly heard through the city and was reported to me. Accordingly, during the night, I kept in check the crowds that gathered at the house, since, with news like this going from mouth to mouth, I wanted to make sure there would be no trouble. By early dawn, the town assembly was full. After the particulars had been explained, it was decided that we should first go to the tomb, open it, and see whether the body lay on its bier, or whether we would find the place empty. A half year had not yet passed since the death of the girl. When we opened the chamber into which all the deceased members of the family were placed, we saw bodies lying on biers, or bones, in the case of those who had died long ago. But on the bier onto which Philinian had been placed, we found only the iron ring that belonged to the guest, and the gilded wine cup, objects that she had obtained from Achates on the first day.
Oh, that's eerie.
Very eerie.
Astonished and frightened, we proceeded immediately to Demostratus's house to see if the corpse was truly to be seen in the guest room. After we saw the dead girl lying there on the ground, we gathered at the place of assembly, since the events were serious and incredible. There was considerable confusion in the assembly, and almost no one was able to form a judgment on the events. The first to stand up was Hylas, who is considered to be not only the best seer among us, but also a fine augur. An augur, Dr. Winkle?
An augur, someone who reads the dancing chicken signs.
Okay.
Right?
In general, he has shown remarkable perception in his craft. He said we should burn the girl outside the boundaries of the city, since nothing would be gained by burying her in the ground within its boundaries, and perform an apotropaic sacrifice to Hermes Chthonios of the underworld and to the Haematids. Now, is this kind of standard advice?
That's standard.
Burn and sacrifice?
That's their standard augur's advice.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, you have to do the proper rituals so that she can pass over and she won't be stuck anymore.
I see.
Yep.
Then he prescribed that everyone purify himself completely, cleanse the temples, and perform all the customary rites to the Chthonian gods, that is, those of the underworld. He spoke to me also in private about the king and the events, telling me to sacrifice to Hermes, Zeusenios, and Ares, and to perform these rites with care. When he had made this known to us, we undertook to do what he had prescribed. Achates, the guest whom the ghost had visited, became despondent and killed himself.
Yikes. So if you decide to write about this to the king, send word to me also, in order that I may dispatch to you one of the persons who examined the affair in detail. Farewell. So
What do we make of this story?
I don't know. I mean, it has in some way until the suicide at the end. It seems like problem solution.
Right. Pretty standard fare.
Right.
This ghost is haunting, so forth. The ghost is upset that the parents wouldn't allow her to spend time with the guy she likes.
Yes.
And so the body's not there. I'm just trying to summarize the story here.
Yeah,
The body's not there, so they call in the seer. What do? Find the body, the corpse, take it out, ritually burn it, make some sacrifices, problem solved.
Right. And this is a standard trope in lots of kind of haunted house horror movies. That kind of the ghost who can't cross over. The ghost is angry because he or she can't cross over.
I'm more like the guy that can't do crosswords.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's its own problem, right? So, and this in Phlegon, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
His version, there are religious rites and rituals to take care of this very problem.
So why did Achates take his own life here?
I don't know. I guess he was so disturbed by these events.
So enamored of this ghost who visited him, and
Right.
she's going to be gone now if she crosses over, and
Yeah.
she's filled with sorrow, I suppose.
And he can't. He wants to join her there in the underworld. Maybe something like that. Yeah.
So we've had Mormo, Lamia, Empousa, and two ghost stories.
And by no means the only ghost stories.
No, there are more.
If you look in Petronius, the Roman texts are particularly filled with them. Petronius, Lucan, Apuleius has lots of these very similar kinds of stories, right?
Yeah, there's a great, I think we mentioned it last time or a couple times ago. We have the Lucan account where Erichtho brings someone back to life on the battlefield. It's a reverse catabasis.
Yes. Yeah. Creepy stuff.
Very creepy.
So yeah, witches, magic, the dead rising. There's lots of that kind of stuff. And you see that these horror stories have a long history. Yeah.
So are we going to get back to caramel apples and candy corn and mulled cider and maybe some popcorn balls?
I don't see how we can.
Mini Snickers bars. Those are probably my favorite.
Wait a minute. Yeah, exactly. Or you get to go to the house, the one house where they were giving the full size Snickers out.
Oh yeah.
And then word circulates like,
that's empty.
Yeah.
But imagine taking something as good as a candy bar and shrinking it down.
I know.
Right? And filling your pockets with them. That's pretty good.
I know, but just one fun, that's not fun. No, the full size, that's fun.
The best part is going through your kids' candy.
Oh, yeah.
And taking the good stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The next morning, I have no idea what happened.
Right. Dad, I'm stuck with all Tootsie Rolls. I know I came in with a full-size Almond Joy.
Yeah. Oh.
And I substituted it with what? An Almond Grief?
Exactly.
So,
All right. Well, I think that's on that happier note.
I was trying to just bring a little light
Yeah,
here,
so
some candy.
On a happier note.
Chocolate-coated nougat ending.
Yeah, but we got to get out of here.
We do.
Yeah.
We got to go get on our Halloween costume outfits.
That's right.
What you going as this year?
I think I'm going to go as a Discolos.
A Discolos.
Yeah, kind of grumpy guy.
Yeah, I know what I'm going as.
What are you going
The
as?
most frightening character imaginable to man.
No, what is that?
The Latin teacher.
That's terrifying.
Yes.
Make sure all the children are in bed before you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Goodness.
Just parsing everywhere.
Well, we got to thank some people.
Yes, we do.
We got to thank Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin, our fabulous musicians.
Yep. Scott's coming out with his... I interrupted.
Go ahead. He's got a new album coming
out?
out?
The new album is called... Well, the old album is called No Words. I gave the wrong title last week.
Oh, no.
Ooh, sorry, Scott.
All right.
Called No Words. Great, blistering, beautiful instrumental stuff. A little acoustic mixed in with blues. Kind of a cross between Eddie Van Halen and Stevie Ray Vaughan. The new one is called Trouble. And got some good tracks on there.
Excellent. And if you want to learn how to sing, check out Ken Tamplin's Vocal Academy.
Yes,
right?
it's incredible. We want to thank our spooky audio engineer, Mishka.
Yes. She does such great work for us every week. Can't thank her enough.
I can't wait to see where she inserted the scary music into this episode.
There's lots of opportunity there. She can layer the whole thing.
Yeah, so we've gotten some great suggestions from listeners lately.
Yes.
Some episode suggestions. If you want to get a shout out, you want to have your name mentioned, we'd love to hear it. Hear from you. Send an email to jeff@adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V, or dave@adnauseam.com with comments, suggestions, screeds, criticisms. Let's hear from you.
Yep. Keep them coming in. We love to hear it. So next week, what are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to have some more Ovidian vignettes.
Excellent. I was hoping you were going to say that.
We're going to cover a couple more. And Hackett Publishing, as mentioned, has graciously given us some free copies of some of their translations that we're going to give away. So check social media. And I think probably what you'll have to do is pass along or tag some people, and your name will be randomly selected, because we're going to be covering a lot of Ovid, right?
Yep.
In the next months, a little vignette or two at a time.
Right.
You can read along in the Metamorphoses as we go through these stories.
Excellent. Very exciting.
And Jeff, you get the gustatory parting shot to take us out.
I do. This comes from the great and unfortunately late Mitch Hedberg, and I'm going to do my best Mitch here. I ordered a club sandwich, but I'm not even a member. I like my sandwiches with 3 pieces of bread. Well, so do I. Then let's form a club.
That's great. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.